You never answer me again, though. I get old enough, so my memory not so good. As you can see, folks, on set with us is Professor Hubert Devonich. He's a lecturer in the Linguistics Department of Language, Linguistics and Philosophy at the University of the West Indies to talk to us about the significance of International Mother Language Day and whether or not we have accepted Patois as our official language. Welcome once again, sir.
Okay, thanks very much. You're right.
Let me ask you the question before we came on. What was the fascination with you with languages?
Oh, because grew up in Ghana and talking the way I used to talk, people always tell you you're talking bad. And even my mother used to say, talk properly. And I don't understand why she's telling me that. So I figured that I talking all right. And the place where you could find out how language works and so on is linguistics. And I found out that I was actually talking good. So after that, I stick with it.
Yeah. Right? And you study languages.
Yes, because the first thing you find out is that every human being, who is kind of is able to communicate because they can hear and so on. They have spoken language, and all languages are able to say the things that people want to say. And that's the definition of language. If I could say anything that I want to say in it, I want language.
Whether I understand you or not?
No, hold on. The point is that I ain't going to talk to you in a language you can't understand.
Right.
But people grow up in a community, they must be talking to one another. Whether they say and how they say it,
right.
that is language.
That is language.
Yeah.
What do you define as mother language? It's Mother Language Day. What does that mean?
Okay, so this refers to the language that your mother uses to you at the time of birth and bringing you up and so on. And so when they say mother language, is like your native language, the one that you learn first. Because of course you usually learn your language from your mother.
Yeah.
And when somebody joke you, you're going to respond in the language you learn from your mother, not the language you learn in school or
the
at
instinctive
university.
language.
Yeah, the thing that make you feel who you is, and you're responding naturally. That is your mother language, right?
I just said we were looking at the Cromanti language, and I said something came up that it was our third language, and I said I didn't know that. Is that
I don't know what people mean by first, second, and third, right? It's another language. It's a heritage language used in Jamaica, and it's a language that used to be used as the first and community and natural language of, among other things, the Maroons in the old days, up to, as you mentioned, the early 20th century, and as well by a large number of Africans on sugar plantations and in the Maroon communities in the centuries before. So, but what's happened now is the Cromanti has ended up dying out as a language of everyday use, even though people use in the Maroon community some words and so on, right? Refer to outsider like me as a brony as an example, right? Which is a Cromanti word. So they have words that they would use, and take you for money and so on. But they don't use it now in the Maroon communities in everyday speech. But here's the trick: that part of their worldview is that the ancestors are always with them. And so when you go to talk to, you have the interview there with Mr. Bernard. At the moment that you start to talk about the ancestors become present. You have to be able to talk to the ancestors in the language that they understand. So in a sense, from the Maroon viewpoint, because the community is both living and dead, people who want to stay rooted in the community and in the Maroon traditions have to be able to talk to the old people in the old people language. And so you pick up these words and so on.
Talk to me about Patois. You just accused me of being dunce or deaf.
Ideas.
But talk to me about Patois.
Well, let me link the Cromanti to the Patois.
Right.
Because the Cromanti and one or two other African languages would have been used even on the sugar plantations and amongst the Maroon communities. But over time, right, there was another language that was used, which is heavily influenced by African languages, but in fact borrowing most of the vocabulary from English, which is where you get your modern day Patois, right? So-called Patois. But Jamaican is part of a group of languages, about maybe 30 of them, that extend from Nigerian Pidgin English, Sierra Leone Creole, Belizean, Guyanese, and I can go on, right? Gullah off the coast of South Carolina. And in all these languages, if you say something like meago or medago, people will understand you because they all have the same structure and they're more or less same pronunciation patterns and so on. So the suggestion really is at some point when the British were building up their plantation system, possibly in Barbados, maybe someplace in West Africa, some people say. There was a group of people who developed this language, and then they got sent off to the various plantation colonies and so on. And you get, therefore, the development of different forms or versions of the same thing. So much as Jamaicans love to think that they're very special, and Picni is a Jamaican word, Picni, everybody knows Picni, right? Gulano, people in South Carolina use it, Sierra Leone use it, Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, blah, blah, blah. Picni, Nyam, them kinds of words are very common across Belize, everywhere. Everybody know them, right? So Jamaica is a special version, and in fact, for the Caribbean, is the largest single English Creole, because there's 3 million of you, the rest of us are kind of, everybody else is another 3 million. So the numbers make Jamaican the best known. But, and Jamaicans don't know that everybody else have the same structures, the same things. There's nothing particularly special about Jamaican, I hate to tell Jamaicans. But Jamaicans love to feel that their language, which is good, right? That it marks you off, because of course it's just some turns of phrase and so on are peculiarly Jamaican and so on. But even people love to say, people in St. Elizabeth talk different and all this kind of thing, right? They have a different patois. Well, all that happens is in the West, instead of saying Mewak, they say Midewak, right? But the deaf form is the form that was brought to Jamaica from Suriname. Because when the British settled Jamaica, within about 10 years, they lost Suriname to the Dutch. And the Surinamese, the new Dutch authorities said the British planters can leave with the slaves that they had got, or the Africans, the enslaved Africans they had with them. And they shipped them to Western Jamaica. So there's a dialect difference between Eastern and Western Jamaica.
Very much
right?
so.
And one of the markers of that is that the deaf form, but the deaf form seems to have developed in Suriname and then went to Western Jamaica, and from Western Jamaica went to Belize, because the Central America was settled from Western Jamaica specifically.
Yeah.
And that's why Belizeans sound a certain kind of way, almost like Jamaicans and so on. And off the coast of Nicaragua, you've got the islands like San Andres and Providence Island and so on. So in bringing back to Mother Language Day, you have a set of mother languages or native languages that grew up as a result of that history. And in the Jamaican situation, it survived or existed alongside Cromanti and other West African languages. But remember one thing. After the abolition of slavery, about 10% of the population didn't come from no slave background, because they were African indentured servants who came here. The British would liberate Africa, but these slave ships. The British had abolished the slave trade. So when, after the abolition of slavery, ships were captured in the high seas, they would be landed in places like Jamaica as free people, but they would indenture them for 5 or 10 years. And so a huge chunk of the Jamaican population not descended from slaves at all, right? And so the Kumina people in eastern Jamaica are like that. And that now introduces another language that is very common within the culture and rituals of Jamaica, which is Kikongo. Because
is that the challenge, Professor? Because sometimes when I hear people talk about patois, and then they say, but how do you decide what it is? Because there are so many different forms and words, and because you have miago, midego, miwango.
So Bayan says, what make you think that all people who talk English talk the same way? I challenge you, if I get a proper speaker of Scottish English, right? For example, I fight to understand them, and they use terms and phrases I don't know, but nobody says English is not a language because I can't understand the Australians when they talk, right? So all languages have variation. French people in France, all over France, they don't talk the same way, they don't use the same words, and they don't have the same structure.
Spanish as well,
right? So where's the big sweat? This big noise about patois is different, and people talk it different, and they don't have no language is spoken exactly the same by everybody.
Yeah. What should we take out of International Mother Language Day?
What we need, well, first of all, the UNESCO, the slogan for this year is Mother Languages for Development, Peace and Reconciliation, and maybe that probably addresses the Jamaican situation, because you have a society that is torn apart by language differences, because the language, color, right, and class differences, they all coincide. The people who talk a certain kind of way, look a certain kind of way, and lack a certain amount of money, they all get treated badly. UNESCO is saying, look, you have to respect the mother languages of people. And these mother languages are not necessarily the languages of power and authority. Not only you must respect them, but they have to be used in school and in government right through. They have a policy that they call dual language education, that in fact, in a situation like Jamaica where you have an international language also alongside, that the two languages must be used right throughout the education system for literacy and so on.
So patois should be taught?
It should not taught, people know it already.
Yeah.
It should be used as a medium of instruction and a medium for literacy, etc., alongside English, because if you don't do that, you even when people learn English as a second language, they are not as comfortable with it as they are in their native language. When they do the Bible translation, for example, you notice they play it and people start to laugh at certain points. Why they laugh is that they suddenly realize what the Bible means, because they've been hearing it in English, they understand at a certain kind of level. But when you get hit you in your guts is when you understand it. No, you can't run a society where you're talking to people and you're not talking to them in the language that they feel in their belly, which is the mother language. So UNESCO talks about, because this is the slogan for the year, right? For this World Mother Tongue, Mother Language Day, which is for development, peace, reconciliation. And I'm arguing that for the Jamaican context, in trying to deal with the crime, the social divisions and everything, language is the core. If we, in fact, use the language of the ordinary people, all that resistance and aggression is likely to go, because you're hitting them at their belly. You're talking to them in the language they
Is
can
that
understand.
a suggestion that we
It's
should...
an argument, a suggestion.
No, but is that a suggestion that we should not be using standard English?
Brethren,
Neville
Neville is
Well,
hard. I've been talking to this brethren for 20 years on these programs. And he asked me the same question every time. But I know he asked him because he wants the audience to hear my answer.
Right.
So he's decided to provoke me again. All right.
I've never provoked you. I've never provoked you.
Yeah, but remember, it's not one man, one head, one language. The only people who walk around talking one language in this world is a set of English people and a small number of Americans, right? The world is multilingual. Most people use multiple languages, right? And to get by. If you're Chinese and you're traveling, you have to learn some English. You were mentioning the airline pilots and so on and so forth, right? But the airline pilots learn, if you're not an English speaker, you learn English like you learn Spanish and French and so on and so forth. Now, the notion that if IMC, notice why I said dual language, UNESCO said, dual, it means two. And UNESCO is saying, run the two together, but it's important that much as you want the international language for global communication and so on, what is far more important is internal communication. How can Jamaica talk about selling goods and culture to the world and this and that and the other? And Jamaicans can't communicate. The state and the education system in the country operating in one language, and then they have a big divide in the mass of the population in the other. That is why UNESCO say peace and reconciliation, development, mother tongue, is the center of the thing. In other words, English is not the center. English is important, but you have to, first of all, reconcile, have peace, develop the population in their own language, and then you start talking to the world. So that's the UNESCO position.
All right. Good enough.
All right.
And you answered. Yeah, as much as you say I provoke you, I got the answer.
All right.
Good to see you as always.
Thanks very much.
Professor Hubert Devenish, lecturer in the Department of Language, Linguistics and Philosophy at UWI.
Next, really? I thought we went there already, but we're going again. The Cromanti experience.
Yeah, we have an interview.
So stay with us.
There you go.